All right, the Zoom room is up, which means we are live. So with our new live procedures, remember your phones need to be zipped up into your bags. I'm following the rule as well. Taking my phone out of my pocket, zipping it up into my backpack. While the Zoom room connects, I'll let you take a quick check, make sure your phones are zipped up. Please, distracting tabs closed. You guys don't feel the vibe. I'll let that trust you're on. Okay, Twitter, can you or actually. Okay. All right, so we're live. That means I need your guys' attention. You should be able to see the Zoom room. We're good there. Okay, so I'm recording the Zoom room like we usually do. Let's check out the agenda on the on Canvas that I've posted today, which is exactly the same as the one behind me. But today we're going to be talking about ways to improve our project 4.7.3 using Display Flex. So we're in the Zoom room. Display Flex has a lot of uses. We'll talk a little bit about the setup. It's a lot of nesting and parent and children relationships with a little bit of CSS to make everything behave. And we'll talk about how to apply it to existing code. Then you'll have some work time where I'll be able to help you get set up with your Flex boxes, with your Flex stuff like that. And that will be our day, just kind of experimenting with this. It's a way to make your page display within the constraints of your viewport, so it's not overflowing. The pieces will interact with each other a little bit better. And I also have some resources real quick that I want to show you here, which are available. There's this video breaking down a bunch of Flexbox design patterns that you can apply with a step-by-step walkthrough, as well as this really cool code pen, which will make sense here in just a second, about different properties for the Flex container and the Flex children. So this is a great reference document that's interactive. You can mess around with these boxes. But first, let's talk a little bit about how Flex actually works. So I'm going to open up VS Code. You are welcome to follow along with me if you'd like. But
whoa,
that's my background, yeah.
No, you don't feel like this or this.
Basically, yeah, it's kind of like Wallpaper Engine. Okay. Oh, so let me unmute that. Let me mute that real quick. Sorry, guys. Okay, so let me open up all my folders, do my usual setup stuff. That's not it. There we go. I'm gonna open this guy. All right. So I'm gonna create a new folder real quick, just for demonstration purposes, and then I'll show you how to apply it to existing code. So this is B Blakeney P1 Flex.
Like,
and then I'm
like Flex period.
What's up?
That has like Flex period.
I'll fix it here in just a second. So if we go back to where am I? Semester 1 web design. We're gonna open up B Blakeney Flex, make a quick index page. .html, the usual stuff. We'll do flex style .css, and I'm not gonna just kidding. I need to follow my own rules. So I'm gonna make a style subfolder like this. Click and drag my flex style CSS into there. Yes, I'm sure I want to move it, and do my usual HTML setup like we've been doing. I'm gonna start by linking this. You can type link and then just hit enter, and it's gonna autofill out that REL style sheet as well as the href. So I'm going to start with my subfolder like normal, flexstyle.css. Then I'm going to go in here real quick and add a type equals text/css, just like normal.
What if the last part is
I'm not sure, but it doesn't work if I don't include it. It's just finicky and mean, so we're going to go with it. All right, so the way that you set up a Flexbox, if we go back to this CodePen reference here, it is a container and child-based setup using CSS. There's lots of different directions that you can take your different Flex elements. Like for example, each one of these numbered sections is a different HTML element, all contained within a Flex container that allows you to mess around with how it appears on the page and how it responds to different inputs, different viewports, different things like that. But the first thing we have to do is actually set up a Flex div container. So the first thing I'm going to do is just type div. Just kidding. I'm going to do it tag style. Div, just like normal. And inside of my div, I'm going to put another div. Then I'm just going to have a paragraph that just has some content in it. Right? This looks like what we're used to Nothing too crazy here. We just have a regular content appearing on our page. But to actually use flex boxes, to actually take advantage of making the thing scale, we have to first set a container. So I'm going to set this div to a class of flex container, like that. And then I'm going to set this div to a class of flex. You can do object, you could do child, you could do descendants, right? There's lots of different options, but you do need both divs because these two boxes are going to interact with one another. One of the divs for flex boxes, one of the two pieces, is the container that holds the entire thing. And then every other div within that container, nested within that flex box, is going to be the element that interacts with the space. That'll make sense here in just a second. So I'm going to call this flex container and flex child. And then we'll just have a paragraph of content in there. I'm going to go into my, let's see, sorry. I'm going to my CSS and just do a quick little div dot flex container like this. And I'm going to add a border so you can see that whole container. Remember, you need 3 pieces of a border. You need a width, which is the pixel width. You need a style, which is how it looks. I'm going to go solid and black. Just like you need a color so you can actually see it, and you can put all of that in one line. And I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to make it a little different for my flex child. Can't type today. Okay. All right, so yes, it's okay. Someone has set the titles to Korean, but it's okay. It should still be in English somewhere. Whatever, doesn't matter. Okay, flex container, flex child. We have our 2 nested divs within one another and a little bit of styling on here to see what those pieces are actually doing. So if I do another border, we'll go 2 pixel dashed black on the child so that you can see the difference between the 2. So if I run my HTML, you can see that around the content portion, there are 2 different borders interacting with one another. Right now, because we haven't set any width or height properties to either our container or our child, they're just going to behave like normal divs. Even though we have, actually, because we haven't set any flex data to them at all yet, my bad. Okay, so what we're going to do on flex container, what I like to do to get started is set the width and the height to take up the entire viewport. Now, the way I do this, instead of using percentages, because percentages can get kind of goofy when they conflict with one another, is I'm going to use a value called VW and VH, which stands for viewport width and viewport height. Instead of taking up 100%, it works the same way, but a little bit differently. It takes up 100% of the available viewport instead of the, it's a weird distinction, but just hear me out on this. So that's the percentage that it takes up of the viewport width. Viewport's another name for monitor. I'm going to set the same thing to the height, 100% of the viewport height, VH, like that. So now if I refresh this, go back here, you can see that my div border or my container border has extended to all of the available space here within my, my viewport. So with that container established, kind of treating the whole body, the entire container here, as my flex container, what I'm going to do now is go into my flex container and set that to be a flex box by writing the display property and setting the value to flex. No, go ahead. What's up?
Never mind.
Okay.
I would like
Display called flex box.
There is, but we're talking about display flex to start. You can see how it's already creating some weird stuff going on because the content is nested within the flex container. But that's because, oops, we have not yet set up our div flex childs to behave and take up the amount of space that we want them to take up. So if we have a flex child, let's say that this flex child is dedicated to text. If you have an image and a text right next to each other, you want the text to be smaller than the image or vice versa, whatever is working for your website. In my case, for the demonstration, I want the content to only take up about 30% of the viewport, which leaves 70% of the space for the image. So what I'm going to do here is go into flex child and set its width to be 30 VW, because that's going to take up 30% of the viewport's width, available width. And then I'm also going to set the height to be 100 VH for viewport height. So now when I refresh, what do you guys think it's gonna look like as compared to what it started with?
Yo, I think God kicked out of the meeting.
Oh, did you guys lose internet?
There's a Wi-Fi.
Okay, I'll check it here in just a second. All right, so but you can see behind me, oh, it's back. It's back.
Back in my home, actually, it's way back. Oh my.
Okay. All right, well, we're back. Sorry about that. But now look, now that I've set my content flex child to be 30% of the viewport width, it's extending within kind of this sandbox space, within this kind of div container space, to only take up 30% of that width. So the reason that we want to have this flex container is we can put however many flex children within that container, and it's going to stay, it's going to stay within whatever bounds we have assigned to our page. So like if I go into my, change this content to text-based flex box. What I can do now is make another div all contained within my flex container. So I'm gonna go div, but I want this one to be for images. So div class equals flex image, and then shift period, add that here. I'm gonna do a quick image tag. I don't have one prepped, so let me just Google something real quick. Hi, good morning. We'll go an image of a computer. Okay, give me just a second to grab a picture of a PC. Hang tight. You guys, this cluster internet all good? Is it still working? Okay. All right. But you can see how by adding more flex children within this nested container, it's all going to be constrained within this little section that I've determined or allowed my my elements to take up. That leaves me 70% of my space here because I have that smaller monitor able to use. So my internet's not wanting to work. Hold on. I'm sure I have an image somewhere. So this is what our HTML looks like currently. Let me see if I can split the CSS. We should be able to just do this. Okay, so now you can see the HTML and the CSS. It's a little bit of overlap, I'm sorry, but I'll grab this computer picture real quick. Any day now. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so I have my link that I'm going to use for my my image. All right. So I'm going to go into my image, SRC like normal. I'm going to paste this link real quick, add a little bit of alt text for PC, and then finish off that image tag. I'm just going to leave the image in its default size. So because the image is in its default size, it's not going to take up any of the space based or assigned to the text-based flex box. That was a mouthful, tongue twister. But what we can do is add some CSS to make this image take up 70% of our available space. And the coolest part about the basics of Flex, the setups that we're doing right now, is that you can really easily distribute and make really easily responsive sites that you can adjust as needed. So now that I have a new, scroll over here, I have a new div contained within my parent of Flex container. I'm going to write a new rule for div.flexImage. And pretty much the same rules are going to apply. I'm not going to do a border on this one, but I am going to set a width of 70 VW. It's going to be the remaining 70% not taken up by the text child. And I'm also going to keep that height at 100% of the viewport.
So the parent div is the container and then the inside is out.
Exactly. So here's our container, which sets the rule as display of flex. It's going to cascade and waterfall over everything we put inside of our site. And it's taking up 100% of the available screen space. These are dividing the screen space amongst the container by 7 to 3%. So now if I go and minimize here, it doesn't look like anything's changed. If I add a border to show you what the actual difference is between these two, we'll add our third border. We'll go 1 pixel solid blue, not bluey, so close. Refresh that. You'll see that it's taking up all of the remaining space here. The cool part about Flexbox is when I resize my viewport, since it's not taking up 100% of the available space, it's only taking up 100% of the available screen space. It's going to adjust depending on the size of my viewport. Yeah, Grace, what's up?
Why is the left side, the box on the left side, why does it have like the line? I like how to have the border, like the line border on the left, but not on the front. So, like this card has like the black border, but this card doesn't have the blue border.
Like this you're talking about right here?
Yeah.
That's it's just because the solid black border is the div container. The dashed black border is the text container. So they're just touching right here. And then the blue border is the image container. So you can see where each of these containers are interacting with each other. And when you resize your viewport, so if I make it a little shorter, a little bit more squat, like this, it's still going to try to only take up 30 and 70% of the available space. The image isn't scaling because we don't have anything assigned to the actual image, but the containers that hold them are adjusting dependent on how much of the viewport width we have available. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the first really basic setup of Flex that I want you guys to try and use. I'll show you actually real quick how to apply it to your existing pages because I know you guys already have a good amount of source that you can work with. A lot of this is just nesting divs within divs and using the cascading nature of CSS, the waterfalling nature, to more easily lay out your pieces. So if you wanted to do this, let me save this real quick. If you wanted to do this on an existing page, like your source code from yesterday, for example, I'm going to go in here and open up my 4.7.3. Okay. And I was experimenting a little bit on page 1. Just kidding. That was on a different file. So if I run my current 4.7.3, which is just that copy from yesterday, it's kind of a mess. We've got all these different pieces all overlapping with one another. It's not scaling very nice. You can see I'm losing data or I'm making this super tall page. We want to avoid that. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. You can avoid that by using some flex boxes. So right now we have all these red div containers, but there's really no rhyme or reason to how they're interacting with each other. So what I'll do is go into my HTML and I need to first set a flex container. So what I'm going to do is go right underneath the body. This is where I like to start mine. I'm going to go div class of flex container. We'll just go flex contain. And then finish that tag with a shift period. Highlight my end tag, Control X to cut it, and go all the way to the end of my thing here and hit Control V to paste it. Now, that does nothing to my output yet because we haven't done the actual setting of the display to flex. So if we go back into my CSS here, which should be, actually I need to rename this. Well, I'll do that in a second. Okay, so now I'm gonna write my div.flexContain. So that's the name of my class. Whatever you set it to is what it's gonna be. I forgot what page we did that on. Which page was it? It was page 1. Okay, perfect. Flex contain. So I'm going to set this width and height to 100 VW and VH respectively. Set the height to 100 VH. And that's going to just take up all of the available screen space and set the display to flex. Now, what should happen is it's going to squish everything into this big mess that I don't want to actually work with here. It's not scaling the way I want it to because I haven't assigned any values to my children yet, my flex children. So if we go back to page 1, I'm going to close these other pages. So I'm not distracted.
Are we just like putting like the big class on the outside or?
Yeah, you start by putting the main container on the outside and then you adjust your existing divs like this. So I'm going to highlight all of these lines so I don't have to go tab, 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 tab a whole bunch. I'm just going to highlight this whole section, everything outside of the flex contain. And I'm just going to hit tab. That's going to nest it one layer over, which is going to put it all within my flex container here. So what I do now, though, I'm learning, I actually need to move this flex contain start tag away from my navigation because right now it's also congesting my nav on the side of my window here. So instead of putting it above very first, I'm going to put it after the navigation so that navigation section kind of remains separate from my final output. Okay, cool. So now I have nav bar across the top and the remaining space is gonna be divvied up equally dependent on my flex children. So, real quick, I'm almost finished. Now that we have our div class of flex contain, we can go into the text, because all of these are text-based classes, and we can just assign a width. Let's say, I don't know, we'll go 20%, not 120%, 20 VW. Just like that. And I'm also going to set the height, instead of being a pixel level, to 100 view height. And I'm going to take off this display property that I wrote because I wanted them to arrange like this. Okay, we'll check the Wi-Fi here in just a second. But remember, this is being recorded, so you can watch it here again in just a sec. But I'm going to take this inline block off with control question mark, because that's going to conflict with my display of flex. Both of these are the same property, but set to different values. So when I refresh and go to my output, nothing changes, of course. Okay, I will look at that here in just a second. All right. Hey guys.
And then error. You guys have no, it's next. It's like my.
That's so frustrating. Okay, they just got it back. All right, I'll talk to tech after this class because that keeps happening. I know, it's so frustrating. Okay. Okay, I'll show you in just, or I'll get with you in just a second. All right, so we have div.text taking up 20% of the viewport width and 100% of the viewport height, and our div.flex contain taking up 100% of the view and height respectively. So let me pull mine over to my other monitor here real quick and see what's going on. It's beefing with me. So just a second. Give me a second to adjust here. This should all be. Maybe there's something going wrong with my flex container. All right, hold on. Okay, so here's all my sections. I'm gonna take this image out real quick because I think the image is what's causing the issues. Control question mark to take that. Okay, so let me, yes. Okay, perfect. Now it's working. Yeah, the image was what's causing issues. All right, so now each of my little sections, each of the children of my flex container, which would be all of these classes of text, are gonna take up only 20% of the available viewport width. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's not going to divide the most evenly, but it's going to give it its best shot. Depending on how big my screen is, it's going to kind of squish those pieces together, retaining whatever park information or CARP information I have assigned to it. Does that make sense? These are the first kind of basic introductions to Flexbox that I want you guys to experiment with. If you don't want to do it to your 4.7.3, you can do it on a separate HTML document like I have here. So if I go into, let me save this real quick. I'll make this root folder available if you want to kind of unpack it, but oh my, stop. Too many pop-ups. Okay, open folder. I'm gonna go back and open up in Web Design Admin in Flex. You could also just create an HTML page like this, so you can see how the Flex pages are going to interact with one another. Okay, so I'm going to close up the Zoom room and then help you guys one-on-one with your specific uses of Flexbox, but is one of the easiest ways to very quickly make your site a lot more accessible and retain these pieces in a really quick way that's not as frustrating when they start interacting and conflicting with one another. So I'm going to close up the Zoom room real quick. I'll add my root folder to the agenda today so you can reference that, this root folder specifically, so you can reference that. There's also that video on Canvas or in the agenda talking about different ways you can set up different display styles. And there's also, I think that's it for now. So give me just a second to wrap this up. I'll be around. Thank you guys for listening. All I want you to do for right now is experiment with Flex a little bit, and then I'll help you set it up as you need. Does anybody have any questions before I start wandering for the good of the order? Okay, perfect. All right, so give me just a second. We'll go off the air. I'm going to end the Zoom. You guys can get started, or you can wait for my input. Either works for me. Thank you guys for listening. Yes.